At 92 years old, Willie Nelson has seen more sadness than most people could handle. There goes that happy ending. He's said goodbye to friends, lost all his money, and watched his dreams fall apart. Hello there, my long. Now, as he gets closer to the end of his life, he's sharing something that surprises everyone who hears it. What are you looking at me for? I ain't got nothing to say. When people ask him about dying, Willie doesn't get scared or hesitate. His answer cuts through years of fake smiles with harsh honesty. Low points. When I lost my son, that was a big one. And everything else seems to pale in comparison. But what made this famous rebel accept his own death so calmly? We're all pretty much the same. And what makes me and you laugh or cry? Chances are it'll make everyone else laugh or cry. The answer is hidden in a lifetime of terrible pain, huge losses, and sadness that would destroy most people. I know several people don't like to see take a hit. This isn't the cleaned-up version of Willie Nelson's story. This is the real truth about what happens when life takes away everything you thought was important. That's, unusual, for people who are as independent as we both are. It's about a man who learned that sometimes the biggest bravery isn't fighting to stay alive, but accepting when it's time to go. The road to this moment of understanding started long before Willie became famous. First time I got on stage when I was about 5 years old. It began in the dusty, hard times of Texas during the Great Depression, where a young boy would learn his first cruel lesson about being left behind. Willie Hugh Nelson was born on April 29, 1933 in Abbott, Texas. But from his earliest memories, the world seemed determined to teach him that nothing stays forever. That one. So I figure anything else, if you get through that, you can get through anything. His parents, Merle and Ira Nelson, had dreams too big for their small town. When those dreams called them to leave, they made a choice that would affect Willie's entire life. At just 6 years old, Willie watched his mother walk away. She left him and his sister Bobby with their grandparents, promising to come back when things got better. Those better times never happened. His father got married again and started a new life, leaving Willie to wonder what he'd done wrong, why he wasn't worth staying for. Being abandoned hurt deeply, creating wounds that would never completely heal. I used to drink a lot. I used to smoke a lot of cigarettes. Willie's grandparents, William and Nancy Smothers, tried their best to fill the empty space. They taught him music, gave him his first guitar when he was 6 years old. But even their love couldn't erase the main question that bothered him. Why wasn't he good enough to make his parents stay? During the super-hot Texas summers, Willie worked in the cotton fields with migrant workers. His small hands would bleed from picking cotton under the brutal sun. The work was exhausting for a grown man, devastating for a child. But don't feel too bad about it. You'll just go crazy again. Just delete and fast forward, my friend. But it taught Willie something important about lasting through hard times, about pushing through pain when quitting seemed easier. The young boy found comfort in music, writing his first song at age 7. It was rough, simple, but it gave voice to feelings he couldn't say any other way. When he joined his first band at 10, playing with the Bohemian Pula, he discovered something powerful on stage. Being abandoned didn't matter. The crowd accepted him, wanted him there. But even as music became his safe place, you were always on my mind. The scars of being left behind stayed. Willie learned early that people leave, that promises get broken, that counting on anyone but yourself was dangerous. What are some of the rules that your family has? There's 3. Don't be a goddamn. If you broke 3, you really screwed up. This harsh lesson would help him in the tough music business. But it also made him understand something most people never learn, that being attached to anything, even life itself, could become a trap. The boy who picked cotton in 100-degree heat, who was left behind by the people who should have loved him most, was already learning that the greatest freedom comes from having nothing left to lose. I feel like, I'm another singer, another guitar player. I know there's a lot better guitar players and a lot better singers. By the early 1960s, Willie Nelson had found love, or what he thought was love. He'd married Martha Matthews, and they'd built what looked like a perfect life. 3 beautiful children, Lana, Susie, and Billy, filled their home with laughter. Willie was chasing his dream in Nashville, the center of country music, writing songs that would become classics. If you had not have fallen, then I would not have found you. But dreams, Willie discovered, don't pay the bills. While his songs were being recorded by major stars like Patsy Cline, Willie himself was struggling to make ends meet. He worked odd jobs, sold encyclopedias door to door, pumped gas, anything to keep food on the table. The man who would become a multimillionaire was sleeping on friends' couches and counting pennies for groceries. Martha grew tired of the constant struggle. She'd married a dreamer, but reality was a 3-bedroom house with empty cupboards and late bills. The fight started small little arguments about money and missed chances, but they grew louder, meaner more often. Willie would come home from another failed audition to find Martha's anger waiting like a loaded gun. The pressure crushed something inside Willie. What do you call that thing there? I call it my way, Francis. Tooch a rattle. He started drinking heavily, drowning his failures in whiskey and feeling sorry for himself. Martha's disappointment became a mirror, showing him everything he'd failed to become. The man who could write songs that made millions cry couldn't figure out how to make his own wife smile. One really brutal winter night, Willie hit rock bottom. The rejection letters were piling up. The bills were overdue, and Martha had said things that hurt deeper than any knife. Willie stumbled out into the freezing Nashville streets, so drunk he could barely stand. In his darkest moment, he made a decision that still haunts him. He laid down in the middle of the street, hoping a car would end the pain. The road was like ice against his back, and Willie closed his eyes, waiting for headlights to bring relief. Cars swerved around him, drivers shouting curses, but none delivered the peace he wanted. He lay there for what felt like hours, understanding for the first time that sometimes the most desperate act is also the most cowardly. When he finally dragged himself home, Martha was waiting. But instead of comfort, she gave him ultimatums. Instead of understanding, she gave him lists of his failures. The marriage was over in everything but name. And Willie knew it. He'd learned another brutal lesson. That even love could become a weapon. That the people closest to you could cause the deepest wounds. Yeah. And what do you mean by that? The man who would sing about heartbreak for millions was learning that some pain is too deep for songs to heal. December 25, 1991 should have been a day of celebration for the Nelson family. Christmas morning, presents under the tree, grandchildren running through the house with new toys, music. Instead, it became the day that would haunt Willie Nelson for the rest of his life. Billy Nelson, Willie's oldest son, had been struggling for years. Being Willie Nelson's son in Texas was like carrying a weight that grew heavier every day. Everywhere Billy went, people expected him to be just like his famous father. They wanted the charm, the talent, the easy smile that made Willie a star. But Billy was fighting demons that fame couldn't touch. Depression had wrapped itself around Billy like a snake, squeezing tighter every year. He'd inherited his father's sensitive soul, but not his ability to turn pain into art. While Willie could write a song about heartbreak and find healing, Billy just felt broken. The medication didn't help. The therapy sessions felt empty, and the weight of expectations grew unbearable. Willie's sister Bobby later revealed how close the family was that Christmas morning. They'd been planning to record a gospel album together, Billy and Willie sharing their faith and their music. The studio time was booked, the songs were chosen, and for a brief moment it seemed like they'd found a way to connect through the thing that meant most to Willie, his music. But Billy had already made his decision. The pain had become too much, the darkness too complete. On Christmas Day, while families across America were unwrapping presents and sharing meals, Billy Nelson chose to end his story. He was 33 years old, the same age as Jesus when he died, a detail that would torture Willie for years. The phone call came in the afternoon. Willie was getting ready for another Christmas celebration when the words hit him like a physical punch. His firstborn son, the boy who carried his name and his hopes, was gone. Not from an accident, not from sickness, but from a choice that Willie couldn't understand or undo. The funeral was a nightmare of whispered conversations and careful silences. People spoke in quiet voices about Billy's struggles, about the pressure of being Willie Nelson's son, about signs they should have seen. But Willie sat through it all in shocked silence, replaying every conversation, every missed opportunity to say the right thing. Bobby Nelson, Willie's beloved sister and musical partner, watched her brother fall apart in ways she'd never seen. They'd been through everything together, shared stages and heartbreaks and victories. But this loss was different. This wasn't something you could write a song about or play your way through. This was the kind of pain that changes a person forever. Willie and Bobby never really talked about Billy's death, not in the way people expected. They didn't have long conversations about grief or healing or moving forward. Instead, they grew closer in their silence, understanding each other's pain without words. It was, Bobby said, Willie's way to feel deeply but speak rarely about the things that mattered most. The death of his son taught Willie something terrible and deep about the nature of suffering. Life ain't no good life, but it's my life. He realized that some pain doesn't make you stronger. It just makes you different. Some losses don't heal, they just become part of who you are. And sometimes the greatest act of love is understanding why someone might choose to leave. While Willie Nelson was still hurting from the loss of his son, another disaster was quietly building. For years, his business managers had been making decisions that would eventually destroy everything he'd worked for. The Internal Revenue Service was watching, calculating, preparing to deliver a blow that would make his personal losses seem small by comparison. In 1990, just 1 year before Billy's death, IRS agents showed up at Willie's properties with seizure notices. The number was shocking. $32 million in unpaid taxes. Be careful about who you let run your business. My advisors, said, do this, do that, buy these, buy those. It was one of the largest tax bills in American history, a debt so massive it seemed impossible for one person to owe. But Willie's business managers had been playing games with his money for years, investing in questionable schemes and failing to pay the government what it was owed. The seizure was quick and merciless. IRS agents took everything: his gold records that represented decades of success, his piano where he'd written some of his greatest songs, his beloved ranch in Texas, where he'd found peace after leaving Nashville. They even took his personal belongings, treating Willie Nelson like a common criminal instead of a cultural icon who'd given America some of its most treasured songs. The life of my heart. I burned up my childhood days. Friends and advisors told Willie to declare bankruptcy, to use the legal system to escape the debt and start over. It was the logical choice, the smart business decision that would have protected his future earnings. But Willie refused, and his reason revealed something basic about his character. He said he'd never do a bankruptcy where the people he owed got screwed out of their money. Instead, Willie chose the harder path. He would pay every penny, even if it took the rest of his life. He released an album called The IRS Tapes, Who Will Buy My Memories? With all proceeds going directly to the government. He auctioned off his possessions, watching strangers bid on the artifacts of his career. He toured relentlessly, playing small venues and county fairs, accepting any paying gig to chip away at the impossible debt. The irony wasn't lost on Willie. The man who'd sung about freedom and living life on his own terms was now basically a slave to the federal government. Every dollar he earned went to Washington. Every concert was just another payment on a debt that seemed to grow rather than shrink. But Willie kept playing, kept singing, kept moving forward with the determination that amazed everyone who knew him. The financial catastrophe taught Willie something valuable about attachment and material wealth. He learned that losing everything you own doesn't kill you. It just shows you what you really need. The houses, the gold records, the ranch, they were all just things. The music remained. The ability to touch people's hearts with a song that couldn't be seized or sold or stolen. By 1993, Willie had settled his debt with the IRS, paying every penny through sheer determination and endless touring. But the experience left him with a deep understanding of how quickly everything can disappear. It taught him that clinging too tightly to anything, even success, even life itself, only creates suffering. The man who'd lost his son and his fortune was learning that the secret to surviving isn't holding on tighter. It's learning to let go. Willie Nelson had always been different from other country stars, but his willingness to take controversial stands would make him enemies in an industry that preferred its heroes predictable. Well, I believe in the if you don't use it, you lose it, So I try to do something every day. While other singers played it safe, Willie spoke his mind no matter what happened. His positions on politics, social issues, and human rights would cost him fans, radio play, and industry support. But they also showed the backbone of a man who refused to be anyone other than himself. In the late 1960s, when racial tensions were really bad and country music was mostly segregated, Willie did something that shocked audiences across the South. During a concert in Texas, with a crowd of mostly white fans watching, Willie kissed black country singer Charlie Pride on the lips. It was a deliberate act of defiance, a statement that friendship and respect went beyond color. The audience erupted in anger, but Willie stood his ground, making it clear that hate had no place in his music or his life. The backlash was immediate and severe. Radio stations in the South refused to play his records. Concert venues canceled bookings and fans sent hate mail by the truckload. But Willie didn't apologize or back down. He continued to support Pride and other black artists, using his platform to challenge the racism that infected country music. It was a costly stand, but Willie had learned that some principles are worth more than popularity. His political activism became even stronger as he aged. While most country stars stayed safely conservative, Willie endorsed liberal candidates like Dennis Kucinich and Beto. He played benefit concerts for Democrats, spoke out against wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and used his music to promote peace and understanding. Conservative fans felt betrayed, accusing him of abandoning his roots. But Willie saw it differently. He was staying true to the values his grandparents had taught him, standing up for the underdog and speaking truth to power. Perhaps most controversially, Willie became one of the most prominent advocates for marijuana legalization. Long before it became socially acceptable, Willie was open about his cannabis use and its benefits. He was arrested multiple times for possession, faced jail time and legal battles, but never wavered in his belief that marijuana should be legal. He even admitted to smoking a joint on the White House roof during Jimmy Carter's presidency, a story that became legendary in both political and music circles. Music. In 2006, Willie recorded a song that would make country music traditionalists angry like nothing before. "Cowboys Are Frequently Secretly Fond of Each Other" was a playful tune about gay cowboys recorded years before mainstream culture embraced LGBTQ rights. The song made fun of the overly masculine stereotypes of country music and suggested that love comes in many forms. The reaction was predictably hostile, with conservative fans calling for boycotts and radio stations refusing to play the track. But Willie's most politically charged song came in 2018 with "Vote Them Out." Released during a heated election season, the song encouraged Americans to use their voting power to create change. While technically nonpartisan, the timing and message were clearly aimed at the Trump administration. The song divided his fan base down party lines, with some fans burning his albums and others celebrating his courage to speak out. Through all the controversy, Willie maintained a simple philosophy. He would rather be honest and hated than popular and fake. He understood that taking stands would cost him money, fans, and industry support. But he also knew that staying silent in the face of injustice was a betrayal of everything music meant to him. Songs, he believed, were meant to change hearts and minds, not just entertain. The battles over his political positions taught Willie something important about courage. Real bravery isn't facing down danger. It's speaking truth when everyone wants you to lie. It's choosing principle over profit, integrity over popularity. And sometimes it's accepting that standing for something means standing alone. For a man who'd built his career on his voice, Willie Nelson's relationship with his lungs became a decades-long battle that nearly killed him multiple times. The very habit that he credited with saving his life, smoking marijuana, was slowly destroying the organs he needed to breathe. But Willie's lung problems started even before his famous cannabis consumption became legendary. In 1981, during what should have been a relaxing family vacation in Maui, Willie's lungs first betrayed him. While swimming in the crystal-clear Hawaiian waters, something went wrong. Whether it was the pressure change, the salt water, or just bad luck, Willie's left lung collapsed. The pain was terrible, like being stabbed from the inside, and he was rushed to the hospital struggling to breathe. The collapsed lung was just the beginning. Years of cigarette smoking combined with his increasing marijuana use were taking a devastating toll. Willie developed emphysema, a chronic lung disease that makes every breath a struggle. The man who could sing for hours on stage was fighting just to walk across a room without wheezing. Pneumonia became a recurring nightmare, striking Willie 4 or 5 times over the years. Each bout left his lungs weaker, more scarred, less capable of doing the job they'd done for decades. Friends and family watched helplessly as the vibrant performer became increasingly frail, his voice losing power, his stamina evaporating. By 2015, Willie's condition had gotten so bad that he was forced to make a dramatic decision. He underwent stem cell surgery, an experimental procedure where doctors took stem cells from other parts of his body and injected them into his damaged lungs. The hope was that these cells would regenerate the destroyed tissue, giving Willie a chance to breathe freely again. The surgery required Willie to cancel tours, disappointing thousands of fans who'd bought tickets to see the legend perform. But it was necessary. His doctors warned that without intervention, his performing days were numbered. The recovery was long and uncertain, with no guarantee that the procedure would work. But Willie's most terrifying health battle came in 2022, when he was nearly 90 years old. COVID-19, the virus that had killed millions worldwide, found its way to Willie's tour bus in Nashville. For a man with severely compromised lungs, the disease was potentially a death sentence. Annie D'Angelo, Willie's fourth wife and the love of his life, sprang into action when Willie woke up in the middle of the night, struggling to breathe. The rapid test confirmed their worst fears. Willie had contracted the virus. Annie immediately started every treatment available: Paxlovid, monoclonal antibodies, steroids, nebulizer treatments. She turned their home into a medical facility, bringing in mobile medical units and monitoring Willie around the clock. For days, Willie's life hung in the balance. His already damaged lungs were under assault from a virus that specifically targeted respiratory systems. The man who'd survived abandonment, financial ruin, and personal tragedy was facing his most dangerous enemy yet. Annie later described those frightening days as watching Willie fight for every breath, never knowing if the next one would come. Slowly, incredibly, Willie began to recover. The treatments worked. His natural toughness kicked in, and he pulled through what could have been his final battle. But the experience left him deeply changed. He'd come face to face with his own mortality in the most real way possible, feeling his body shut down, his breath becoming labored, his strength ebbing away. The lung battles taught Willie something crucial about the relationship between life and death. He learned that dying isn't always dramatic or meaningful. Sometimes it's just running out of breath. The man who'd feared many things in his life discovered that the process of dying was less frightening than he'd imagined. It was, he realized, just another transition, another change in a life full of changes. When Willie talks about not being worried about death, now his lung struggles provide context. He's already experienced what dying feels like: the gradual shutdown of bodily functions, the increasing weakness, the acceptance that comes when fighting becomes futile. He's learned that death isn't the enemy, suffering is. And sometimes accepting the end is the kindest thing you can do for yourself. In the world of country music legends, Willie Nelson has become something rare and sad. The last man standing. The Highwaymen, the supergroup that defined outlaw country, once consisted of 4 giants: Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, Johnny Cash, and Chris Christopherson. Now Willie sits alone with their memories, the sole survivor of a brotherhood that once seemed indestructible. Johnny Cash, the man in black, was the first to fall. His death in 2003 left a hole in country music that could never be filled. Willie watched his friend and collaborator die from diabetes and respiratory failure, seeing firsthand how a titan could be brought low by the simple failure of human organs. Cash's final performances were painful to watch, his voice weakened, his body failing, but his spirit unbroken until the end. Waylon Jennings followed in 2002, his body finally giving in to diabetes-related complications. Waylon had been Willie's closest friend among the Highwaymen, a kindred spirit who understood the outlaw lifestyle and the price it demanded. They'd made music together, toured together, and shared the kind of friendship that only comes from surviving the same battles. When Waylon died, Willie lost not just a collaborator but a brother. The most recent loss came in September 2024, when Chris Christopherson passed away at 88. Christopherson had been Willie's peer in every way, a songwriter's songwriter who understood the craft of turning pain into poetry. His death hit Willie particularly hard because Chris had been the youngest of the group, the one they all expected to outlive them. Instead, Willie found himself attending another funeral, saying goodbye to another piece of his past. Standing at these funerals, Willie began to understand something deep about survival. Being the last one left isn't a victory, it's a burden. Every death among his peers was a reminder of his own mortality, a preview of his own eventual fate. But it also taught him something valuable about the nature of legacy and letting go. Willie's reflections on Christopherson's death revealed how deeply these losses affected him. He spoke about how Chris had left behind a treasure trove of songs for the rest of them to sing. For as long as they were here. That phrase, for as long as we're here, carried the weight of understanding. Willie knew his time was limited, that he was racing against a clock that had already claimed his dearest friends. But watching his friends die also taught Willie about dignity and departure. Each of the highwaymen faced death in their own way, but all with a certain acceptance that comes from living full lives. They didn't rage against the dying of the light. They embraced it as part of the natural order. Cash continued performing almost until his final breath. Jennings kept making music despite his pain, and Christopherson remained creative and engaged until the end. The experience of being the last highwayman gave Willie a unique perspective on mortality. He realized that death isn't something that happens to you. It's something that happens around you constantly until finally it's your turn. Watching his friends pass taught him that the fear of death is often worse than death itself. The anticipation, the dread, the clinging to life. These things cause more suffering than the actual transition. Willie's acceptance of his own mortality isn't morbid or depressing. It's practical. He's seen what happens when you fight the inevitable, and he's seen the peace that comes with acceptance. His friends didn't die in vain if their deaths taught him how to live without fear, how to face the end with grace and dignity. Now when Willie performs, he carries the voices of all his fallen comrades. Every song is a tribute, every concert a remembrance. He's not just Willie Nelson anymore. He's the keeper of a musical legacy that will die with him. That knowledge doesn't make him sad. It makes him grateful. He's been chosen to be the final witness to something beautiful. And when his time comes, he'll join his friends with stories to tell and songs to share. The last highwayman isn't lonely. He's honored. And when death finally comes calling, Willie Nelson will greet it like an old friend, ready to rejoin the band. At 92, Willie Nelson has earned something most people never achieve: complete honesty about life and death. His brutal acceptance of mortality isn't born from depression or defeat. It comes from a lifetime of experiences that stripped away every illusion about what really matters. He's been abandoned, betrayed, bankrupted, and broken. He's buried his son, lost his fortune, and watched his body slowly fail. Yet somehow, through all of it, he's found peace. Willie's revelation about not fearing death makes perfect sense when you understand his journey. He's learned that the things we cling to most desperately, money, fame, even life itself, are temporary gifts that will eventually be taken away. Fighting that reality only creates suffering. Accepting it brings freedom. The man who once laid in a Nashville street hoping for cars to end his pain now faces death with calm certainty. Not because he wants to die, but because he's no longer afraid to live. He's discovered that when you've lost everything that can be lost, what remains is unshakable. The music endures. The love endures. The connections between souls endure. Willie's brutal honesty about wanting it to end isn't about giving up. It's about understanding that endings are just as natural as beginnings. He's watched the people he loved most pass away, and he's seen that death isn't the monster we imagine. It's simply the final verse in a song that's been playing for 92 years. His acceptance teaches us something deep about courage. The bravest thing isn't fighting death. It's living fully while knowing death is coming. Willie Nelson has done that, creating music that will outlive him, touching lives across generations and showing us that a life lived authentically is a life worth celebrating beginning to end. As Willie continues to tour and record, he's not running from death. He's dancing with it. Every performance could be his last. Every song a farewell. Every moment a gift. He's learned the secret that eludes most of us, that the only way to truly live is to make peace with dying. If you found this journey through Willie Nelson's remarkable life as moving as we have, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Willie's story reminds us that even in our darkest moments, we can find light, and that acceptance isn't surrender, it's wisdom. Thank you for watching, and remember, like Willie Nelson, we're all just here for as long as we're here. The red-headed stranger has taught us his final lesson.